Hello, welcome. I hope that everybody can make it here and that you can watch. Um, and let me know if you can hear me, if my microphone, I hope it's working. The little green bubble is working. So, hi, welcome to our live stream. And this is our lunch party. It's 12 o'clock. So that means that the Backerkit is live. So I hope that you can see this from the Backerkit page and that you're able to see everything that I prepared for you today in the lives in the crowdfunding campaign. So I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about what is there so that you can make some good pledges today. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is here. I think I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and go ahead and go to the campaign. Never mind, it's not doing that. Never mind. Ugh, okay. Well, I'm just going to read from my campaign page and just kind of go through what I prepared for you today. All right. So the first thing that I have is the Welcome to Yafasma, which is the place where the literal translation means it came from the Greek term for textiles. And so I thought that was an appropriate name to call my world that is based on textile magic. So I have a couple of tiers that we're going to talk about. First of all, there's the ebook and digital bundle. That's the first one. That's going to be $7. The maps are going to be included in this digital bundle. You will also get the playlist that I listened to as I wrote this, and this bonus scene that I really loved, but I just could not have it in the book. It just slowed it down a little bit too much because I wanted to get right into the action, but I love this scene. So I'm including this as the bonus material. So each book, the paper and digital, will include tables of stitch binding spells, a pronunciation guide, and the etymology of all the names, as well as the first two chapters of book two, the next book, Chains of Deceit. And if you pledge for this, your book will be mentioned as a supporter in the back of the series, and there's no limit to these. So I took a lot of time putting down all the stitch binding spells. The pronunciation guide is something that I feel like should be included in all fantasy books, especially if you have weird sounding names. So I included those. Also, this is the art. If you scroll down, you can see the art. It's beautiful. I have a different map. That's just the plain map. I actually spruced up the map, the two-tone, and that will be included. And then the formatting is gorgeous. I love the scroll work at the top, and it includes quotes from the Book of Weaves and on every Linnea chapter. Okay, so the trade paperbacks are beautifully formatted. They will also include the map and character art in black and white until we meet that first stretch goal. And our goal is to raise $500 so you guys can get all your rewards. And if we just move that a little bit farther up to $500, we will get all color in all the book tiers. These premium book paperbacks will be signed by the author. You will also get a double-sided bookmark, which is also included. The ebook and the digital downloads will also be included. So you'll get the paperback as well as the ebook in that paperback tier. The next tier up is the case laminates, which is a premium hardback, and it will be signed by the author and numbered according to backer number. So as you come in and you start pledging for these things, the first pledge will get number 1, and the next person who pledged will get number 2. So like the paperbacks, these will have the beautiful interior formatting. You'll get the double-sided bookmark, and then maps and art are included, and they will be in black and white until we get that stretch goals. And these books will be part of that sprayed edges when we reach that tier for sprayed edges. The case laminates will be included and part of that. And then you also get the ebook and digital downloads. Now, these are going to be beautiful books that will be handed down for generations. So I'm limiting these to just 100. Now, for the first time ever in that I have ever done a Kickstarter or any kind of crowdfunding, I am going to have a premium blue cloth-bound book, and this will have the beautiful head and tail bands. It'll have the foiled spine. The jacket will have an opportunity to get foiling if we reach that tier level in our crowdfunding campaign. It'll have a blue satin ribbon bookmark embedded into those headbands, and it will be printed with premium ink. This book will look stunning on your bookshelves, and these will be signed and numbered as well. But I thought to make it a little more special, I'll either add an illustration or like some kind of sticker. You also get everything else, the double-sided bookmark. And if we reach our stretch goals, we will upgrade the paper, get the colored art, and spray those edges as well. And hopefully we can get to the custom sprayed edges because I've got great plans for that. And those are also ebook and digital download available. The next tier is a book tier that includes a homemade stitch binding sash. So stitch binders gain power by tying knots into linen cordings, creating these magical enhancements to anyone that touches the finished knots. So they keep a ready supply of these prepared cordings at their waist, braided into a stitch binding sash. So you too can have these powers with this homemade, custom-sized stitch binding sash made from white macrame cords. So, and this tier comes with the premium bespoke cloth-bound book, and I'm limiting those to 5. Story mentorship. This is something new that I've decided to do because I love teaching and I love mentoring. As a multi-award winning author, I would love to read and give you advice on the first 50 pages of your manuscript. As a sought-after instructor, I can help you hone your craft and talk about plot points, talk about endings and everything else, even though I'm only going to read that first 50 pages, so that you can get it published or just even finishing your story. And it depends on what you want to do with that next. We can kind of talk about that next step for you. Some restrictions do apply. I'm not going to read anything gory. I'm not going to read anything with a lot of sex, but anything that is within, those parameters, I'd be happy to read. And this also comes with a premium paperback book, but you can upgrade to the hardback or the cloth bound if you would like. You just have to pay the difference. So I also have a bunch of add-ons that I've included. I have a sticker and postcard bundle. These are going to be at least 4x6 postcards with the character art and maps. And on the verso, there will be a table of stitch binding spells and character names like who and the pronunciation guide. The stickers, I haven't really done the stickers yet, but they will either be characters or those significant symbols in the story. I'm super excited about the hard enamel pins that we've designed. They are durable, stylish, and fun. And you can wear them anywhere to know that you're a stitch binding fiend, right? Once you back, you'll have the opportunity to vote on which kind of metal that you want on the back, whether it be gold or silver. I think they both look gorgeous, so I couldn't decide. So I'm letting you guys decide. The digital art pack, rather than selling the art and having to mail out posters, which with how the mail system is today, I just don't trust them. So I thought I would give you the digital download, and you can order prints yourself. And this will include the character art, the colored end paper art that is going to be in those gorgeous cloth-bound books, and any other art like sticker art or whatever that I decide to include. Name a character in the sequel. This is going to be super fun. I have a lot of people in the next book that I haven't named. So some possible names would be, I have a villain in the next one. I have Kimp's sheepdog and other minor characters and their little animal friends that I would love help naming. Now, there will be some parameters. They have to fit in the world. I'm not going to name somebody Hank unless it actually works, in that world. So there will be some parameters, but that's something that we can discuss afterwards. But I think this would be really fun in a way that you can contribute to that next story and kind of have a little bit of ownership in it. And then you can tell all your friends, hey, that was my idea. Like, that was my name. The next one is doing a video call with me about the next book. Like, if you have questions about the world, about where this is going to go, I would love to do a one-on-one 30-minute Zoom call to ask all the questions you want to know. But I will warn you that this call will probably contain spoilers because I cannot keep myself from sharing what I want to know. So if you don't want any spoilers, this is probably not the best thing for you. Or if you just want to ask questions about writer life or anything like that, I am totally open to that. The last add-on is early access to book two. If you are dying to read the next installment, I will grant you like premiere first access and actually allowed you to give me feedback in book two of the Stitch Binding Chronicles. You will get a polished draft before everyone else in the PDF or ebook form, and that's going to be sent through BookFunnel. And then, you know what? I decided to add just last minute. I decided to add that I will send you one of the first paperbacks or hardbacks, whichever one you want, if you decide to go with this early access book two tier. So I'm super excited. Let's talk a little bit about shipping. Now, how BookFunnel or how Backerkit runs um, their platform is that they don't charge shipping as part of your funding goal because that money goes not to the creator but to the UPS or USPS or your international shipping. So they decide that they're going to collect this afterward, and that will give us a more accurate once I have your address, I can give you a more accurate shipping. So I just pulled up just rough, basically, like for the US, I made it so it was like anywhere in the US, including Mexico, including Hawaii and Alaska, which has a little bit elevated shipping. So if you live really close and if you live in my neighborhood, you won't have to pay shipping at all. But if you live really close, then the shipping will be, of course, a little bit cheaper. So I have that shipping table in there as a reference. It's just kind of a rough guide. I'm hoping that it'll be less than that, but I'd rather give you more and have it be less than having you to come up and pay more and be surprised. So, one of the things I am super excited about if we reach this funding goal by this first week, I will include an extra bonus prequel novella featuring the tragic and heartbreaking love story of the Great Hunter and Barathea. This is part of the lore of the world, and I am so excited. Like I kind of hint at it at the story, but I love the story of their love story and their surprise ending. This will be delivered digitally and will be available to everyone who pledges at the ebook tier or higher. So I'm super excited about that. I really want this story to be shared. It's part of the lore. It kind of helps you understand the rest of the story, but it's not absolutely necessary. Also, in case you didn't know, everyone who backs within the first 48 hours at a physical book tier will receive a homemade stitch binding bookmark or keychain delivered with your book. So you will have the option to choose which one you want, the keychain or the bookmark, in that backer survey when we've all closed out. But of course, all of these rewards are dependent on whether or not our project funds by the end of the funding period. The end of the funding period is September 26th. So if you see something that you want, we've got to get those people, invite our friends, tell people, get people involved and help them to reach our goal. So I have a picture of the stitch binding bookmarks. Also, something that is new, that is slightly different from Kickstarter, because I've run some Kickstarter things before, is that in this Booktopia, that's what I'm participating in, there's over 50 other authors that are running backer kits right now. We are each paired with a partner. So because, I'm really picky, my readers are really picky, I had to be really picky about who I was going to partner with. But I got together with Laura, and Laura writes, she says her books don't really fit into a genre, and I can see why. They are adult, but they don't have any of the gore. There's not a lot of intimacy. There's not any intimacy, like no graphic violence or sex. And her themes run around found family. So I collaborated with her. Now, here is the most awesome thing that I love about Booktopia and Backerkit. If you pledge to it has to be, I think, book physical copies, at least for mine and hers too, then you will get 6 oracle cards. And these beautifully designed oracle cards have like scenes from the book. Mine have spells from the book. They're stitch binding spells. And there's actually like 56 of these cards in the Booktopia um in the Booktopia campaigns that are running this month. So if you want to collect all the cards, you can you have to pledge to each of these books, book campaigns. And I left a picture, an image of all the beautiful cards that are there. There's also a decorative box. I think it's Reimagined the Relics Saga who has that beautiful box. So when you collect all of these cards by pledging to these creators campaigns, then you can collect them and then use them as reflection, as just something to look at. They're just beautiful artworks to display. Also, Booktopia, because am contributing to this huge, massive outpouring of 50 plus creators, Backerkit is going to give us if you back 5 or more campaigns, then you will get a metal bookmark that says "Reading is Life, Booktopia." So it's super interesting, super cool that you have so many freebies there, and Backerkit will be the one mailing those out. The cards, those are our creators, but the Backerkit will be sending you a metal bookmark for if you pledge to 5 campaigns or more. So that's super exciting. Woohoo! So the next thing I want to talk about is stretch goals. We have so many beautiful things. So here's the deal. I kept each of my tiers as low as possible because I want you to get the best and the most out of all these things that I'm giving you. I want you to have an opportunity to participate in this funding for the least amount as possible. Like I really try to keep my prices low. And so because of that, if we can get more people in here, the more people that we get in here to pledge, the more money that we can get toward our crowdfunding goal, the more things that we can get with the things that we already pledged. So color art is at 700, 1,000 is a paper upgrade, so it just has that better quality paper. At 1,300, we get foiled covers and jackets, which I'm super excited about. I think that's going to be beautiful. On the cover, my designer already sent me all the design work for that, so I'm really hoping we get there. That's only at $1,300. I really think we can make it. The sprayed edges are 1,500. That's just a single color. If we only make it that far, which I hope we get to the custom, then I will send out a survey and we can talk about what colors we want, what color we want on the single sprayed edge. But if we reach $2,000, and I really know that we can do this. Edge template looks so beautiful. That's what's pictured up there. That's what I'm going for. I know that we can get together if we all like pitch in and try to make this happen. So with a few minutes, I thought that I would read a little bit of the excerpt just because I think it would be fun to hear how I interpret the reading. So I'm gonna just read a quick little excerpt, just quick little chapter 1 right here. So chapter 1, Linnea. Burning, burning, always burning. Smoke choked the sun and turned the cerulean sky a dark ashen color. If Linnea could find the cure to the plague ravaging the land, she could stop her people returning to Mother Spinner in the form of ash through the incinerators. Thick white cordings hung from her arms. She coughed, ducking her head, ducking her chin deeper into her cloth covering her face. She climbed the stone steps to the principal palace set in the middle of the valley, the focal point of Linden City. In all her 16 summers, she'd never smelled such a wretched stench of smoke. She must find the cure and stop the incinerators. At the top of the stairs, she stopped the massive metal doors towering overhead, the height of over 10 women, the grand entrance. No one passed these portals by mortal strength alone. In the great siege, the crashed soldiers failed to open the doors, weighing hundreds of stones. With haste, she tugged the thinner white cording hanging from her braided stitch binding sash and tied the chain for strength of mother spinner. At the end of a series of complicated stitches, she completed it with a finishing knot. The white cording glowed yellow. She wrapped it around her arm. Power flowed to the tips of her fingers. The tingling sensation usually made her giggle, but not today. Grabbing the handle, she tugged. Even with the strength enhancement, she still strained with her might. The grating of metal on stone, the thick with grating of metal on stone, the thick door eased open under her glowing grip. Wind rushed through the slit, rustling the cordings folded over her arm. Slipping inside to the vestibule, she closed the door behind her, saddened that in other times the portal was left open. Power drained as from her as the knotted cord around her arm dulled to a gray hue. Untying the spent cording, she let it hang from her waist, good only for tying back hair. She ran her fingers through the cordings of her stitch binding sash, letting the soft linen tickle her fingers. Sighing, she shook her head. More cords were gray than white. Gone were the days when she could refresh her sash easily. Without enough workers to harvest linen and to make new cordings, she must conserve their power. Linnea stiffened her aching shoulders for the work before her. Her Mamu, the queen, needed these cordings immediately. Inside, she removed her face covering and inhaled the scent of lavender, lemon, and other herbal remedies used to wash and clean. In before times, the large windowless vestibules had welcomed dignitaries from foreign lands, the Barbadan to the south, Utrica to the north, and the Moray to the east. Now, cots and makeshift pallets, stuffed with chaff, lined the walls. Threads lit with glow offered little light. Linen curtains hung between the sufferers for a modicum of privacy. In her haste, she tripped on a lump of protruding stone on the floor. A few cordings slipped from her arms. Scutch! She couldn't tell her mother that they were sullied. Aren't princesses supposed to be graceful? Linnea spun to see the bearer of the voice. A young man stood near the rear of the vestibule. Though a head taller than her, he appeared no older than her 16 summers. Hair the color of tow partially hid his blue eyes. He lowered his choir where he jotted notes and approached her. She shifted the weight of the cords to the other arms. Carrying large bundles isn't covered in my royal training. She narrowed her eyes, struggling to control the unwieldy bundle. You could help. The boy didn't have the accent of the lowlands of London, yet he didn't wear the Highland wool vest. Oh, yes, her mamu required all visitors to burn their native clothing and wear the linen tunic of London. Keeping his cool gaze on her, he bent and retrieved the fallen cordings. I do as I'm told in London. His voice held a sharpness, a bitterness that accentuated his lowered brow. You command, we obey. Ah, yes, Linnea eyed him with a hint of pity. He wasn't unpleasant to look at, for a Highlander, if his face hadn't held such disdain. And that unnerved her. No one in London looked at her like that. Blue eyes partially squinted, hatred blazing in his gaze. You must be one of the delegates from Crash. Her mother invited them. Linnea had yet to meet them all. She'd been too busy tending to the ill. Finding the cure to this wretched plague occupied all her free time. Indeed, he tucked the choir under his elbow and bundled the fallen cords over his arm with a certain air of confidence. He must be someone of importance. What is your name? She asked. Kemp. He brushed back his bangs, but they fell into his eyes. They fell again into his eyes. Follow me, Kemp. She nodded toward the next set of doors leading to the great hall. No need to introduce yourself, he said, with a voice as salty as the winds from the deltas of Barbadan. What do you mean? Linnea stopped and faced him. Everyone knows who you are. He lifted his chin. Your lowness. With biting acid in his voice, he bowed, his head nearly touching the stone floor. Then he stood upright, challenging her with his gaze. Caught off guard, Linnea ducked her chin into her mask to mask her smile. If he hadn't been for his sour expression, his wit would have made her laugh. She straightened her spine, speaking with a tone of indifference. All right, then, come with me. Frowning, he lumbered after her through the doors to the great hall. Inside, curtains separated the room into compartments, each with a fallen writhing on a cot. High above them, tainted daylight poured from the arched windows, leaving faint patterns of tracery on the polished stone floor. Before the illness, women in swirling gowns with layers upon layers of tightly woven fabrics danced with men to stringed instruments and feasted on their harvest. Linnea's me- Linnea yearned for those carefree days. She could almost hear the folk tunes and taste the memories. Those celebrations were far removed from the sickness and moans before her. By royal decree, her mother canceled all celebrations, including Linnea's official betrothal announcement. A pain shot through her at the thought she should have been betrothed to Rhett by now. Halting in her haste to cross the great hall, she nodded to a pair of young attendants dressed in brown tunics crossing her path. Dull gray cloth wrapped their clean hair. The two scurried about with a few cordings ready to stave off pain or to improve the mind. Good morning, princess. Each one bobbed their head and ran a hand down the stitch binding cordings hanging from their woven sashes in greeting. All the attendants were at least in their 15th summers. Those over 70 summers and those under 10 summers were too vulnerable. Even the middle aged suffered terribly. The queen was one of the few over 20 summers attending to the sick, which gave Linnea tremors in her stomach. Should the queen fall ill, who would rule? The, thought, the thought sent shivers down her spine. Surely Linnea was too young. Linnea returned the greeting with a swipe of her own sash. Good morning, Stay and Staff. Have you been here all night? Staff nodded. Bags sagged under her eyes. You stay longer and help more than we do. Maybe the courtings will work today. Perhaps. A sting of tears formed in Linnea's eyes. So far, none of their stitch binding healed the illness. A lump formed in her throat. Let me know of any improvement. She hoped her voice held more confidence than she felt. So far, Linnea's experiments had proved fruitless. Staff and Stay bowed, nodded, and ducked under a linen partition. At the end of the great hall, Linnea opened the door. This way. Kemp followed. What are these cords for? Hesitating at the threshold, Linnea bit her lip against the question. Her mother specifically forbade her from divulging any information about stitch binding to the visitors from Crash. Without being blessed by Mother Spinner, or Stook, the Crash couldn't chain a small cording with any power. Even so, describing stitch binding to outsiders was forbidden. Sorry to disturb you, princess. Someone tapped her on the shoulder, clad in a gray collector's tunic. Rhett! Distracted with the cordings, she hadn't noticed him. Tight lines crossed his face. Her heart ached for him. We have another one. Scowling at Kemp, he motioned for her to follow him and stalked toward the far side of the hall. Thank you, I'll be right there. Closing the door, Linnea swallowed hard. Should she take the cordings to her mother and tend to the sick first? Her mother insisted the need was urgent, but the collectors only sent Linnea the worst cases. She turned to the Crash boy, narrowing her eyes. Kemp, was it? Would she get into trouble for allowing him to hold the cordings? No one else was nearby, and she didn't want to lug the cordings in to tend the sick. What a hassle that would be. Surely he wouldn't defile them. Will you promise to take care of these? She raised the bundles, settling them into a chair. Promises were the highest form of respect. Lindens made promises to Mother Spinner, to partners in business, and to those they loved. If you command, he mocked her with a deep bow. It's not a command, it's a two-way promise, and I promise no harm will come to you for holding them. Give me your hand. She held out her fingers. Raising a brow, he clasped her palm. At his touch, a buzz went through her. Alarmed, she wrapped a cording around their two hands. Repeat after me. What we say, our word is bond. We are bound by word and cord. We promise to be of one accord. He repeated the words. They unclasped their hands. With a deep sigh, she handed him the bundle of trussing cordings. It was only for a few minutes. Leaving them unattended would be worse. Desperate people stole them, hoping to use them for loved ones. He was better than nobody. Do not let them out of your sight, and wait here. Leaving him by the door, she clutched her stitch-binding sash and followed Rhett to see what fresh horror awaited her. So, thanks, Tim. I'm so glad you're here. It's super exciting. So I kind of wanted to talk about, I just have a few little bits remaining. I just wanted to talk a little bit about where this story came from and what's going to go on next, kind of a little bit. So the where this book came from was actually from a dream. Like, I know that sounds really cliche, but I had this dream that this princess, it was actually kinda more sci-fi than fantasy. It was kinda weird because in dreams don't make sense. But in my dream, the princess was taking care of something, and she had to go into the future to find the answer to the problem. And she was engaged to this guy, and there was a poor servant boy that was in the castle. And when she went into the future, the the only one that recognized her was this poor servant boy, because he was the one that truly loved her. And I woke up and I was like, wow, I really like that concept. Like, that is such an amazing concept, but I don't have a story to go with it. So I was like, what kind of a story could I build around this concept? So I love fabric crafts. I do a lot of sewing. I have tried my hand at crocheting, but I am such a terrible crocheter. Like, I think it's because I'm too tense. And so, like, all my crochets are like this big when they should be like this big. I'm just like, and so, I was super excited to do a magic system that was a little bit different. And I wanted to do something different. And so we went to the USS Lexington, which is down here in Corpus Christi, here in Texas. And in there is this display of all these beautiful knots. Some of them were sailor knots, some of them were different types of knots. And I was like, that is so cool that these sailors have to learn these different knots to learn how to like do all this stuff. Like, and they just had these beautiful things. And I took a picture, not of the knots, which I should have, because now I'm like, dude, I need to go back and take a picture of those knots. But I took a picture of all the names of the knots because I was like, "That's super cool that the knots have names." Like, I knew that they did, the sheep shank, the granny. We have names for knots, but I just thought it was so cool that they had all these names. So I have a picture of the names of the knots, but not the knots. And I was like, "Ah." So so as I was thinking about this, I was just really impressed with that. I already had this history of soft textile crafts. And so my husband and I were talking about the story. I was like, I want to write this story. I love this idea that the person who truly loves her recognizes her no matter what situation she's in. And so my husband and I were sitting on Mustang Beach on spring break, and I think it was 2021, and the kids were playing in the surf. It was very cold, so I was wrapped in a towel, and my husband was like, "All right, let's talk about this. We're sitting here, we're by water, it's very relaxing." And he's like, "Well, what kind of a magic system do you want?" And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. I've never done a magic system before. I've written contemporary romance. I've read a lot of stories with magic systems. Brandon Sanderson, of course, is a huge favorite. And I was like, well, how about knots? How about like tying knots, and every different knot has a different strength enhancement or a different enhancement that can give you different qualities or different physical abilities. And my husband was like, "Oh, I love that." And I was like, "You do?" And because I was like, "Women would like it, but would men like it?" And he was like, "No, that is a really cool idea." He's like, "You could name the knots different names." And I was like, "I already have ideas." And so from there, we had the magic system. And then I was like, but what kind of world? Like, I wanted the magic system to not be magic. I wanted it to be incorporated in the world, that is the world that they live in, that they don't see it as magic. This is just a part of their lives. And so I came up with this beautiful world called Lindens, where they grow linen for these magical stitch binding cords that are imbued with power. Like, they have to be prepared by the priestesses in the temple in order to have this like light giving force. And because of that, they are able to have like power, which is super cool. So after that, we just kept building on a story from there. Um, I've always wanted to write young adult fantasy. That's what I read when I was a kid. I read a lot of fantasy. I still read it as an adult. If you look at my bookshelves, it's like Brandon Sanderson and YA fantasy. But I knew that in order to write good YA fantasy, you would need to have, um you would need to have a good romance. To me, romance is central to YA fantasy, um, and so I decided that I was going to learn how to write a good romance first. And so I've been published multi times. I think I have 15 or 16 books in the contemporary romance genre. Many of them are award-winning titles. I was traditionally published. I started out traditionally published, and I moved indie because I wanted to have more control over my publishing schedule, covers, and I loved my indie press. I would still recommend them to, or my small press. I would still recommend them to anybody. It's not that I didn't like them or I didn't part ways with them. It's just I love being able to have this control. Um, but when I took writing classes in college and stuff, a lot of my professors were like, "You should write slice of life, like contemporary." And I was just like, contemporary is just so boring." Like, sorry to all those people who love contemporary. It's great. It's great. It's great. I love it. But I really wanted to write fantasy, but I didn't know how. And so I took this course. Like, I was talking to one of my friends who was in my church community. He was a writer, and he was like, "Oh, I've been taking these classes from Dave Farland." And Dave Farland was the one that taught Brandon Sanderson back in college how to write fantasy back then. And so he was like, "You should take Dave Farland's class." And the funny thing is that Brandon Sanderson had been teaching a class at college at BYU, and he recorded all of his classes and he would put them online on YouTube. I mean, this is like back in like 2005 or something. And so I was like watching all of Brandon Sanderson's classes and writing notes. I have notebooks full of notes, and I was trying to incorporate that into my work, even though I wasn't writing fantasy. And I was trying to do that. And then when I heard this friend who told me about Dave's group, Apex, I was like, you know what? I want to join them. I want to have Dave teach me how to write fantasy. And so I took classes from him. Sadly, he passed away, but I think one of the best compliments I got from him when he read the first couple of pages, which is why I still get a little teary eyed when I read the first couple of pages, because I think about Dave as my mentor. And he said, "Well done." And I knew that I was onto something special when I knew that Dave, who'd read lots of people's work, that he appreciated and liked what I said. So thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited for this project. I hope you have an opportunity to go over there and pledge on the actual project and be able to find something in there that makes you happy, that gives you all sorts of joy. Share it with your friends so that we can meet our goals, not just that $500 goal, but also that $2,000 goal. And let me know if there's something you would like to see, because I'm totally open at this point. I can still add stuff, and I'll continue to add stuff throughout the campaign. So I'm super excited. From now until September 26th, you guys are awesome and able to do those things. So let me know if you guys have any questions. Let me know if you want to see stuff. So thank you, and thanks for attending.